So I just want to make this video. If you want to rebuild a power steering rack, this is a 2010 Honda Odyssey. I think all third gens would be pretty similar. I guess where to start is you need to get the rack out of the car. It's a little difficult. I'll make a video later about it. I got a different way to pull it out, which isn't quite as involved. But so then you're left with the rack, and I guess just how to disassemble it. This is over here, in here like this. There's a little circlip here that's in here like this. So you need to spin this until the little tab, this little part comes out right here. It'll kind of pop out, and then you just need, so you backspin it, you know, until it pops out, and then you spin it this way, and you'll basically just curl this seal right out. And then this comes out pretty easy. Then this, you may need to, I used a pair of expanding pliers and just kind of grabbed it and pulled it out. But you could also move the steering shaft and then just kind of push this out. So that kind of comes out with all that. And then this is a seal in here. This is the new one. So you just pull this whole seal out. This whole seal assembly just pushes in there. This is a metal piston. Then with that out, then you can slide this shaft out. This is a Teflon seal right here, and underneath this Teflon seal is an O-ring. So it's a double seal. So it's this assembly right here that's under there. You're left with, this is the old seal, but you're left with this seal inside here on this side. And the way the factory service manual tells you to do this is to get a socket that's 27.5 millimeter, which is basically this diameter right there. And I was able to use a 19 impact Pittsburgh, and that was the tightest fitting socket that I had. They also say, the instruction manual says to get a washer that's 27.5 mil and put it down in there first. And I think that would be a good idea. I didn't. And what happened was that the seal moved a little bit, but then in the press, I just basically pressed the socket through the seal, and the seal stayed in the housing. But basically, so you put in a 27 mil washer and 27.5 mil, and then this socket is 27.5 mil as well, and you use that to push that seal. They say 5 to 6 mil, so, and the seal kind of sits like right in here, so they want you to move it just a little bit, and then they have a special tool that they want you to use. But basically what I did was I found a washer, and I made my own. This is a little bit bigger. This is probably like 29 mil, and I shaved the edges off so that it would fit inside this housing, and I could drop it in there. And with the gap, because this is up against the aluminum housing, with the gap from moving it, you're able to kind of lay this in there, and then I kind of shook it to a side, and then I repressed the socket assembly through the housing. And with this metal washer, because it was slightly bigger than the socket, it didn't get pushed through the center of the seal, so it removed the seal successfully. So you don't really need a special tool, just a little ingenuity there. So this wasn't that big of a deal, but that's probably a sticking point And yeah, so there's that. Then also just you need to remove this assembly from the housing. This is the valve body assembly. There's 4 Teflon seals here that come in the kit to replace. But before you remove these 2 bolts, I would go ahead and remove this bolt, which is this assembly here. This is a wear surface that holds the steering rack, a spring, and then this is the assembly here. So you loosen this jam nut and then you unthread the plug, and that's how that comes apart. And then here, this is just a cap basically, and there's this is what's sticking through there. So this nut holds the shaft on, and you basically just take this nut off, and then with those 2 other pieces removed, you can slide out the whole valve body assembly off. And then these are just the bushings. Those come out pretty easy. The valve body, this would be in here like this normally, and then this is just the seal, so that just gets pushed in and seated there. And then there's a little paper gasket right there. So to replace the seals, you just take like a little sharp knife or a pick and you kind of pop those open, and then you just expand these with your finger, just barely. You just kind of work it around and stretch them out a little bit until they're just barely big enough to kind of fit over, and then you work them down. The installation tool is like a cone, so then it just like slowly expands the Teflon seal, but without the tool you can stretch it with your fingers. And then what I would do is just wrap this in like a Coke bottle plastic and then tape it real tight to like compress the Teflon seals down to their original size, or you can use like a hose clamp and just clamp them down, but use a plastic Coke bottle to like protect the Teflon. But yeah, and then so in the rebuild kit, these bearings, this bearing here doesn't come in it, and this bearing here in the housing doesn't come in it, and this bearing here, there was no numbers for this bearing, and I wish this bearing felt a little bit better, but these 2, this bearing here and the bearing in the upper assembly, feels fine. So I'm just gonna roll with it, but I'll put the numbers of the bearing in the description, so if you want to order them you can. Also, then there's a seal here, and it does come in the kit, but to get the seal out you need to push the bearing out, and I don't like pushing bearings from the middle. I'd want to push it on the outside of the cage, and you can't really do that well. So I'd like to replace the bearing, but since I don't have it, and since my rack wasn't leaking right here, I'm just going to run with this seal, and if I need to replace it in the future, I'll go ahead and do that. But yeah, and then also there's only power steering fluid in this assembly from here to here, and then in this assembly. And that's what this seal and this seal keep the power steering fluid in here. So you're supposed to grease the threads for the rack and pinion, and then grease these threads here. And then this assembly in here is dry. So you need to lube this bearing up a lot, lube that bearing with some just high pressure grease. There's no fluid in this housing. These do come out. This seal, there's a seal here and a seal here. These are like I believe they're check valves. these seals don't come in the kit, but this O-ring and this O-ring do come in the kit. So and there's O-rings on either end. Just to give a, if you guys want to freeze frame this, this is kind of the disassembly diagram of the steering rack. This isn't outlined in the assembly directions really well. Just kind of give a quick demonstration here of these, stretching these Teflon seals out. You just kind of gently stretch it out a little bit, and then you just don't want to see, this one's probably get it to go, yeah, see, and then there you go. And then you just want to wrap this with like a plastic, and then just compress the seal at 360 degrees with the plastic and like some tape, like wrap it real tight, and then just let it sit for a little while and let the Teflon seals return back to their actual shape. So you do that here, and that's pretty much it for the complicated part. When you put this seal back into the housing here, this front one, you want to wrap these teeth in tape, electrical tape, lube it up real nice, and then slip this over, slide it all the way down, and then you use this whole assembly as kind of like a let's back you out a little bit. Use it as kind of like a press, and then you just press with the seal here and in the tube, you just press it to the very top of the tube. You don't want to over press it because you don't want to compress this seal or damage it in any way. So I would probably put this shaft in without the seal and bottom it out to the bottom of the aluminum, and then get a kind of a mark. And then you want to, with the mark, add the thickness of the seal, and then you know, okay, when I get the mark to the tip of the tube here, that the seal is fully seated, and then you don't have to press it anymore. Then to just show you this seal is fully seated into this housing. You don't want to mar any of this surface here because the rack slides on it. You can take a screwdriver from the backside and kind of try and catch the very edge of the seal and push it out that way. What I was actually able to do was took this special tool, this tool that I made. I cut away a little bit of the lip seal while it was installed in there, and then I just kind of, to give this room, and I just kind of forced this in like that, and then centered it up. And then with that in there, I was able to put this in a press or whatever. You can just use a hammer at this point, but get a big enough socket and then just tap it out, and then this whole thing came out. So you just push the seal in here, there's an O-ring here, and then this is the cap to the rack there, and then this just rides on this portion, the unthreaded portion of the rack there. So that's how that goes together. So I just want to come back, fully assembled the rack here. I did end up finding the spec for this. So basically, you leave the jam nut loose, you torque this to 18 foot-pounds to settle everything, and then you loosen this completely, not take it all the way out, but just loosen it, and then you torque it to 2.9 foot-pounds, which is like nothing, and then you back this off 15 degrees from 3 foot-pounds torque. So just, it's a light snug. I used a torque wrench and angle guide, and the 15 degrees said ±5, so you could go up to 20 or as low as 10. And then just you make sure the rack feels nice and smooth. Other than that, this was the kit I used to rebuild this rack. It didn't include these 4 O-rings. They're identical. I was able to find some O-rings that worked in my assortment kit, and then this is the other 1 and 2. These 4 are identical. And pushed in the new bushings. I just want to give that information out to you guys. Not a lot of people disassemble and rebuild racks. This from the factory is like $800. The rebuild kit was $50. The bushings were like these 2, but this is why I tore the rack apart, was because these bushings were bad. Those are like $30 from Amazon. The 2 bearings would probably be another $50-$80. But you know, you're into it for maybe $100, and you have a OEM quality rack, as long as there's no damage. That's just kind of a general overview of what's involved and how this rack comes apart. Any questions, I'll answer them. Hope this helps.